Hey, we're now live with Sydney Startups. This is take 3. We've had a few false starts.
It's about iterating and pivoting, Matt. We actually had to pivot the table. So
yeah, we had to get an Ethernet cable as well. So if you're there, maybe leave a like or a comment just so we know we're live. That would be great.
Anybody watching?
There's one person.
We've got one. Two. This is going. We've doubled our growth.
It's 100% growth.
100% month on month.
Ryan Cross is just see his likes going across.
Ryan Cross is in everything, so he's
hey, Ryan says hi. Hey. So we've actually just come back from Burlingame Rec Center. Mick was setting up some camping gear as a community camp out kind of thing happening. So this was a heavily requested topic in Sydney startups. A lot of startups are interested in raising money. We actually crowdsourced a bunch of questions from the community. Lots of reactions, lots of likes and hates, and he's coming across. And so this is a topic that I think a lot of startups are interested in, but kind of eludes them as well. And so we're having this AMA, and then we've signed up about 24 startups to do office hours. So next week, office hours will start where you can come in and have like a half-hour session with a mentor that is experienced in raising money, whether they're like a VC or an angel or a lawyer. That's a thing we're doing for the community. I guess the last thing to mention is that we've just announced our T-shirts as well. So if you buy a T-shirt, there's about 12 left. You get a sticker with every T-shirt that you buy. Not these ones.
They don't look like this.
So let's kickstart the AMA. So I love to start things with like why are we doing something? So I guess from your experience, like why do startups raise money? And in the past, like why have your startups raised money?
I think it's a very important question. I think there's way too much Kool-Aid being drunk to say that you start a startup, you raise some money, and then Google buys you. Like you can't watch the Social Network movie and think that that's how it all works. It's very good for people who are running a startup to realize a startup is just a nickname for a potentially high growth business, typically technology based. And if you're running the business, and raising money is one of the ways, one of the tools you have to possibly run your business. So I think it's critical that entrepreneurs actually really ask the question, co-founders and teams, do we need to raise money? Is it the right thing to do? You can raise money for a number of reasons. You can raise money because you can't even get started. You might need a lot of money even to research it or build a prototype. If you're in health or a big hardware technology, maybe you need some funds to get started. Normally, though, funds are about growing your business. Raising capital is about growing your business. So you're thinking about, I've got something that's working, and if it's bigger, it's going to be better and more profitable, more revenue, etc. A really important thing to remember is that raising money is actually selling a part of your business for capital in order for you to use it for some specific purpose. So you want to know what that is. You don't want to just say, I want to raise money just because that's what startups do. You really want to think that through. Yeah,
I'd love to jump in here with another question as well. Like, so you've invested in some startups as well.
Yep.
Of the startups that you invested in, like, why did they raise money? Like, what was it for?
Nearly all of them had got to a certain point where enough was working and they wanted money to go longer and to try to grow the business. The results of that have been wildly different. Some of them almost probably 3 months after they raised, the original premise proved not to be true or not scalable. And one of those companies, FlightFox, which I invested in, has reinvented themselves in significant ways, but they're still about travel. And now they're nailing it with a corporate focus on travel. Other companies invested in thought they were working really, really well, and they did it. But it's the best thing I like about capital raising and when I invest is about a formula. Mm-hmm. So, Mick, we spent $20,000 to acquire 50 customers, and they made us $25,000. We think if we spent $250,000 to acquire more customers, we could make $1 million. And it's coming from a basis of proof and evidence of what you've already done.
Yeah.
And it's telling me how you're going to spend the money rather than just One quick thing, if you're saying you're raising money to spend it on product development or engineering, it says to me that your product doesn't work yet, that you don't have product market fit. And it's critical. Do you have product market fit and it's just about growing something that's working, or are you still experimenting? And the risk factor is massively different.
Yeah, I'd love to delve in a bit more. So what do you define as product market fit when you're looking at a startup to invest in? Like, what are the signs for you?
So there's two parts to this, and people don't think about it. They think product market fit is some customers really liking your product, but it's about your market. Who are you focused on? And so the three parts to it: what is the product? Who's it for? And does it really fit? Some people are like, yeah, I've got 100 signups, so I've got product market fit. Like, product market fit has to be, I'm paying for it, I'm using it every day, I'm loving it. Something significant that means fit rather than just liking it. So
yeah, look at all these likes that are streaming across the video. So some semblance of product market fit there. So the second question is, if we've established I need to raise money for my startup, how much should I raise? Because you see different amounts and different justifications.
Before we get into that, in terms of the alternatives, if you're raising money, you're not in control of your business. It means your business has a massive need that you can't fulfill by selling a product or doing what you need to do. So there's a really good podcast by Andreessen Horowitz, and a podcast I was listening to today. They summarise this really well. That sort of said, until you stop raising money, you're not actually in control of your own business. So if you, and Australia is really, really good at doing this. Australia is actually really good at building businesses and products that people just use. We make enough money. Because of a lack of risk funding, risk capital, we've actually very good at building just organically growing businesses. So if you can do that, you keep more of your company, you don't have pressure to grow and grow and grow. Like, my view is that should be your first goal. If you can get to that, why capital raise? Like, why would you sell any part of your company if the future is bright? So the first goal is get happy customers, make a profit. If you absolutely need a capital raise to grow, okay, but it's a second order problem. Yeah, so
this is one of the popular questions that was in the poll, and some people said, when should I bootstrap versus when should I raise money? And there was a really good blog post I read this morning actually by Tomas Tungs. He compared like kind of two companies. One was a bootstrap SaaS business, one was a high growth business. And so in what time should I bootstrap, and then when should I raise? What are those inflection points?
Yeah, my view is you should bootstrap. Bootstrapping is just running a good business that doesn't need external capital. And if the capital actually is going to grow you faster than by bootstrapping, and faster is important to you, then great. Then maybe you should consider that. But or if there's a significant thing, if you're a hardware business and your next manufacturing inflection point is to do 100,000 units, then and you need a significant amount of money to bankroll that, okay, consider a capital raise. But I think the first view should be, can I make a product that's profitable and use organic growth? Because then I'm in control. So I think that's the first one. The other thing about that comment is the high growth is it's a roller coaster ride you can't get off on. If you raise angel capital, like from Australia or from someone who's happy with just dividends or what they call singles and doubles, great. But as soon as you take $1 of venture capital money, you are just swinging for the fence until you're out or you hit a home run. It's 1% of the time they'll accept a less than a home run. But you have to be going to be $1 billion company. Like, that's the only basis on which you go. And Australians really struggle with this because of our small market. They're trying to raise venture capital, but they've got a $100 million idea. And $100 million sounds huge, right? But it's too small. It's too small for venture capital. Venture capital they're okay if you aim to be a $10 billion company and your fallback is $100 million, but you can't aim for $100 million and hope that maybe you go beyond that. Like, you have to be going for $1 billion. Beware that you raising money puts you on a growth trajectory, which puts a lot of pressure on you. Read the post on Aaron Levy from Box about the sleepless nights from Series C onwards to IPO. It's a hell of a lot of stress. So, and if you look at Australian success stories, Atlassian, Campaign Monitor Business, BigCommerce, they built in Australia, sold globally, grew organically. Their first capital raises, a tiny $60 million.
Mm-hmm.
Australia's good at it. Let's keep doing what we're good at.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the first question from the audience as a comment. It's from Dean Collins. But isn't that what venture and venture capital means? If a product is working and cash flow positive, it's more merchant banking than venture capital.
No, there's still massive market risk, I think, Dean. There's a lot of businesses out there that are doing $50K in revenue, $100K a month revenue, and maybe they'll be a $25 million business, especially in Australia. I'd say 95% of business tech businesses can only be $50 million businesses in Australia, mm-hmm. because we're a small market, we're tiny. But if you're selling into a big market and you've got validation there, it's about growth.
Yeah.
Think about all the things you've got to get right. Can I run a team of 500 people?
Mm.
Will the technology actually scale? There's a lot to say that Friendster actually failed the technology stack, hardware rather than actually just their software and their offering. There's a whole bunch of things to get right. So you're still a 5% chance at Series A. Yeah. It gets better, but I think there's still massive amounts of risk in there for that.
Yeah. So we're eventually getting to the second question now. So it's so now we've answered kind of the why, and then how much should you raise? How do you work that out?
So there's some really good writing on a website called Slicing the Pie, I think, and talk to entrepreneurs who've been through multiple rounds, and watch Silicon Valley TV show. I know it's a comedy, but it actually so it's actually a documentary in a lot of ways. A lot of those things are real. So the runaway valuation is actually true. If you can't do anything significant with the amount of money you've got, you've got to have a plan to say, I need this amount of money to get here, and when I'm here, I'm going to be materially better.
Yeah.
So how much money do I need? And you're kind of guessing on about 5 fronts.
Yeah.
What's it going to cost me? How long is it going to take? What's the market reaction going to be? But use your best judgment and talk to other entrepreneurs. No one in city startups should be doing anything significant like signing a term sheet or implementing a plan without talking to another 3 or 4 entrepreneurs about it. We're so big and so strong now, there's no excuse for us not doing that. And the same thing, how much money do I really need? One thing I'll say, Australians often have a point of view where they say, I'll just get 250K and that'll get me 6 months and then I'll raise again and I'll get 500K. The process of capital raising is painful. It takes a lot of time. It takes you away from your business. So my view is, and you never know when a downturns are going to come. Mm-hmm. We've had 8 years since the last meaningful downturn. 9. It could come at any point, right, where there's no capital around. And 2008 was horrible. That was just no capital for 2 years. So my view is raise with some fat. You got to think through some costs. Think it's going to get you, aim for at least 18 months, preferably 24, because you're probably going to cost twice as much and take twice as long. So, work out how much you need to raise, how much you need to actually run the business and get it to the next significant point, put in a bit of fat and talk to some other entrepreneurs and get some feedback on it.
Yeah.
The other thing to think about is you do triangulate with the valuation. You don't want to ever give away, more than 30% in a round. The goal is sort of 15%. 20% is pretty average. So you've got to triangulate between how much you need, how much money, how valuable is it, etc. So they've all got to try, and it's hard. It's a hard part of the job, but it's another reason why raise enough money, get back to running your business, put it in the bank, put 90% in the term deposit. Far too many entrepreneurs are like, wow, now I've got 500K, I can hire 6 people, and they bump their burn rate up massively, and 3 months later it's gone. So, have someone very frugal in your team who can look after the money.
Yeah. I've heard those figures tossed around by other entrepreneurs as well. You try to raise for 18 months because it kind of gives you a bit of a buffer, and also it takes. I assume it takes a few months to raise. I've tried it, and it does take a few months. But in your experience, how long did it take? And then the startups you invested in, how long did they spend doing it?
So when you're capital raising, unless you are a complete and utter successful entrepreneur with an amazing track record, or there's someone in your group that has that, in your team, or your product has got ridiculous traction, or the product looks like pure magic, no one will. The first person investing in you is the key one. It's the lead investor.
Yeah.
So the first person who puts money in is taking the most risk, and no one will invest in you without a relationship. So this happens in the Valley. So in the Valley, they write more checks without a relationship, but there's always another basis. Like you come out of Y Combinator. Y Combinator is the proxy for quality.
Yeah.
Whereas you can raise money a week after you ask to raise money, providing you've built a relationship for 6 months.
Yeah.
So if Matt was left Atlassian and said, I'm starting a new business doing X, I could invest in you in 20 minutes because we've known each other for 5 years. If we just meet right now, wow, really interesting, Matt, like what you're doing, great background at Atlassian, fantastic. It's going to take me, my view is, it takes 3 months to build a relationship to get confident enough.
Yeah.
And a lot of Australian entrepreneurs make this mistake. They work on the product, they work on the customers, they're iterating, they get it to a point of strength, and then they say, now's the time to go build relationships with investors. My view is you should be building relationships along the way. Not because you're capital raising, but because when you're ready to capital raise, you want them to already know you, trust you, and have a track record.
Yeah.
Because what you're trying to tell me with investing is that for the next 9 years, you can execute on this business and build it to be really big. I'm going to base that on your previous track record. If you say, well, I've built and exited 3 businesses, no problems, here's a blank check. If it's your first business or the business is early, I don't have as much to go on. Or if our relationship is young. But if I get to know you over a 3-month period and know that you execute, know that you communicate well, know that you are open about your challenges, wow, maybe you can keep executing for the next 9 years. And that's what an investor is doing, is evaluating between the big opportunity up here and where you're starting from now and the possibility you can execute on that. And that's why the team is the most important. Because no matter what you've got right now, 99% of a business is yet to come. Can you actually build the yet to come?
I was also curious as well, like in your experience, what's like the fastest time you've seen someone raise money? Because I know you're also involved in Spreet. I know they kind of went from like an idea to product to like almost raising their first round. Like, was it like 8 weeks or something? Or
yeah, so we launched I think in 29 days. Dean had a sale within 45 minutes.
I actually remember that. It was like a WordPress blog, and it was the first deal was the cafe downstairs. It was like a pizza place or something. Seriously,
it was 6 meters we went to go. And the second deal was actually co-working at Pollinizer, which was just free desks, right? But but that's different, right? That someone else has done product market fit.
Yeah.
And we're applying it to a different market.
Like he had a background in that industry, right? He tried something similar, Booking Angel.
He had a background, and we're basically 95% copying, applying Groupon to Australia. And still it was bloody hard.
Yeah.
Like still we had to learn about the market. We had to go and get customers. We had to work out 100 little things. And we were doing, Justus Hammer was doing like 16 variance testings per day on 300,000 emails. And so still it was really, really hard. So, but yeah, we launched really quickly, made it work. We did all the rounds in Australia. No one was going to invest. Then through Chris Hitchen, who I was working with at GetPrice, through Pollinizer, Chris Hitchen said, hey, there's a guy in Switzerland who wants to invest in this stuff. Dean jumped on a plane the next day, had an hour meeting, and the guy said, okay, I'll invest.
Yeah.
And he flew home with a $400,000 check.
Yeah.
But that guy had invested in, like, he was one of the early investors in Skype, and they were, so he knew the risk profile. But the reason why people in the Silicon Valley write checks is because they've written 20 other checks.
Yeah.
Like, and they're probably entrepreneurs themselves. So they're like, oh, I get what you're doing. I get the opportunity. I see the path. Here's a check. Whereas in Australia, 99% of the time, you're not talking to someone who's ever walked the path. You know, they've used websites, but you know, do they know? They've got no idea of the risk profile and what the possible path is. So it's why it's a completely different world.
Yeah, a lot of what I hear is like a lot of pattern recognition that VCs do, whether it's good or bad.
I think it is bad sometimes, and they miss out on things. But they also know, like I think Blackbird does this quite well. They're like, hey, this sounds really crazy and it sounds like it's too good to be true or too far-fetched. But you know what? There was a bunch of businesses like that. Like Uber sounded stupid to start with. I told the Skype guys to fuck off and said that Skype's a stupid name and the voice over IP doesn't work. Airbnb. Oh, people are going to rent out their own homes to strangers. Like, yeah, sure. So So I think that, again, if you've seen enough of those happen, you're like, you know what? In my profile, I'll make 10 pretty safe bets and I'll make a couple of crazy bets.
Yeah, another thing I want to touch on, the theme of this AMA is like raising money, and like, people seek to raise money from a VC or angel. But, I believe that you get more than that as well, right? You also get like an advisor that maybe they're expert in a certain area.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
So my view of the priority is work out how much money you need, work out who the right investor is, and then work out valuation.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a spreadsheet I use, and for the investor, if someone's shortlisted or qualified as a possible investor,
mm-hmm.
I multiply by 10 the amount of money they're going to invest,
mm-hmm.
and I actually write down, how do I get that much value out of them as an investor?
Yeah.
So if someone's putting $1 million in my company, how can I get, over the next 5 years, how can I get, how much did I say, million? 10 million bucks
mm-hmm.
of value out of them?
So this could be in the form of advice or connections, or they help you do some sales or something.
Totally. Being in a cohort, support, helping you raise the next round of capital, what's
mm-hmm.
their expertise. Like, you are hiring a partner which is almost impossible to fire. Mm-hmm. So if I hire you for $1 million a year, on probation, I can fire you in 20 seconds. If an investor puts in $1, you've got them until, like, you can buy them out, but it's significantly harder, more painful. Yeah. Like, and again, flip it on its head. Stop trying to go to investors and going, please give me money. Like, you're offering them a chance to get 100x
mm-hmm.
in your company. Like, you want to be interviewing them and saying, well, what's your experience investing? What have you invested in before? Can I speak to some of the co-founders? Back channel. If they've invested in stuff and they don't give you the co-founders' details, find who they've invested in and ask them, and why didn't they? Like, definitely do heavy due diligence on the investors. Like, the more serious you take it, and again, this goes back to Silicon Valley TV show, like, desperation stinks in terms of capital raising, whereas arrogance and confidence, and I don't need your money anyway. I'd say that I don't think there's an exception that I have StartMate's an easy one for me. I invest in StartMate, but mm-hmm. in terms of a direct investment, I've only ever invested when I had FOMO. It was like, you're you're not gonna, you can't. We don't need any money, Mick. I'm like, oh, come on, I've been helping out. I'm great. Take my money.
You got to play hard to get.
You got to play hard to get, because I'm also evaluating in terms of the pattern recognition.
Yeah.
If you're terrible at raising from me, how are you going to do the next round? How are you going to do a big partnership?
Yeah.
How are you going to hire an awesome product manager? How are you going to actually?
I'm glad you pointed at me.
Make him, you're the best product manager in this room. So that's saying a lot in Silicon Valley. So. I'm evaluating, like, if you're a terrible negotiator and like, oh, sure, you tell me the valuation. How are you going to do an IPO? And maybe you're not going to get that far, but, and again, so that signals and pattern recognition does matter, because they don't, again, unless I know you for 10 years, I'm just basing it on what I know.
Yeah. So the next question I have is, we'll touch on this a little bit. What's the process of raising money? So let's say I've got an idea, I've been working on it for a while, and I want to raise my first round of capital. What's the process? Like, what do I do? Who do I go speak to, and what are the steps?
Really importantly, I think, in terms of the process is do your planning and be prepared, and start at least some of it early. Like, don't again wake up and go, great, we've got product market fit, I've got some traction, I've got my team, I've got my plan, time to capital raise.
Yeah. Because
again, you've got no relationship, and it takes a while to warm these things up. So I would think about as far away as possible raising money. Like, if you have to raise some seed money just to get started, maybe you're better off joining an accelerator or but you want as much visibility as possible. And my advice is, again, think about, at least guess how much you might need, and then think about who the best investors are, and start building relationships with them. I think this is by far the best thing to do. But you're not saying, hey, I want a capital raise in 9 months' time to raise $1 million. Here's my pitch.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, hey, I'm Mick Liubinskas. I'm putting this company out. I want to make it really big. I've got these plans. Can I get 20 minutes with you? I like to share my plans, get some feedback. So Jeff McQueen says, ask for money, get feedback. If you ask for feedback, you might get money. But the real goal of it is to actually build relationships with the investor over 9 months, because it also establishes a track record. So if we've never met and you're Thomas from Redpoint, hey, if I grab a coffee with you every month and I tell you, this is what we're working, this is what we've done, this is what we're doing next month, this is what we're struggling with, this is how you get help, and I do that 9 months in a row, you've established at least reliability, you've established work ethic, you've just shown progress, and in that 9-month meeting, if what you want to happen is, it's great. Actually, we just hit 45 grand monthly revenue. We just hired Mary in from Slack, and looks like we got a sales model working. It's progressing well. Thank you for your help.
Yeah. And
you want Thomas to be like, so what if you've got more salespeople? So when are you looking for capital raising? Oh, gee, Thomas, I hadn't even thought about it. Oh, I guess if we had $3 million, we could probably put another sales team on and launch the next product. What most people do again is they wait till the last minute and they're about to run out of money and I've got to go capital raise, and they've got no relationships, no preparation, and then they go out desperately and they get shitty terms. So you just want to be as prepared as possible and start the process and build those relationships as much as possible. I had a co-founder would send a weekly email, and it was only the subject headline was communication. It was how many sales, so many trials, and there was a couple, 3 numbers, and I didn't even have to open the email, but just drip feeding with me going wow. And then 4 months later, it was I sort of at least was growing with them.
So 2 things. I actually think that quote is from Pitbull, the rapper. but his one was ask for money, get advice. Ask for money. Ask for advice, get money twice.
Right. Okay.
No, but I'm sure it's in other places too.
But in terms of, again, roughly what I like as a plan is to build relationships over time, get to a point where you have 3 times the amount of money you need as qualified investors. So if Matt, me, and someone else roughly invest 100K each, and you need, we've got to be bigger than that. We've got to pretend we're VCs. So say we invest $1 million each, and you're trying to raise $1 million. If you've got 3 of us that you've had 5 conversations with, we've shown interest, we actually write checks for $1 million. We've followed up, we've helped you in some way, some way to say that they're qualified, so that if you actually, if you went with a good plan, they could possibly do it. This is another mistake that Aussies make, is that they get one person who's going to put in 5K at $1 million valuation, and they're like, okay, we're capital raising, and you're trying to build from 5K up.
Yeah.
And the what happens then is, and this is Matt Barry's comment, is the golden rule is that whoever has the gold makes the rules. Just to nicely quote Matt. I'm sure you're listening in there, Matt. So if you've only got 1 investor, they set the terms.
Yeah.
If you've got 3 investors, we're capital raising for a company, Muridi, at the moment. And I say, hey, I'd like to introduce you to the company. They've already got 2 term sheets on the table, but I think you'd be interested. We get a meeting the next day.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, I've got 5K committed. Possibly I could grow. You want to build your qualified base up really high. Because again, this is a sales process. Mm-hmm. You are selling 20% of your company for $1 million, because in the future that might be worth $50 million.
Mm-hmm.
You want at least 3 investors at the table who are at least interested before you say I'm capital raising.
Yeah.
If you're doing an angel round, my goal is to, again, be 3x in terms of the amount you're raising, and then to be basically go get the lead investor, and that lead investor should be the domino that you knock them over and everyone else invests.
Yeah.
So say I've got 10 angel investors who are interested in, quite interested, and I know they all love and respect Matt Ho. I'm going to go to Matt and say, Matt, I want you to join my board and be an advisor. I'm going to give you an extra 0.5%, providing you invest 100K at a $4 million pre-money valuation, and I'm going to raise a minimum of 500K. target $1 million, maximum of 1.5. But you're in front of Kate, and I want you to join the board tonight. Then I get to call everyone else and say, hey, guess what? We're raising money, $1 million. Also, Matt Ho's joining the board. And he's investing 100K at that valuation. Okay, and it's like, oh, wow, Matt's in. It's already been set. And the other thing is a deadline. So I don't go and say, hey, have a look, and whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
You've got to make your investment a top 3 priority in their lives. And you've got to make them think, shit, Matt's in. I like the company. They've been communicating me for 3 months. I've got to actually wake up tomorrow morning and do something about this. So I email them the documents. I give them the bank details, and I say, I need to get back to running my business. Mm-hmm. So this is closing in 2 weeks' time. Mm-hmm. The only way I can do that in terms of that speed is by all that preparation.
Yeah.
If I do that with no relationships and no competitive tension, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're basically trying to create a situation. You're trying to create a confluence of events, confluence of events, where basically the business has got to a point where it's ready. It's got it's ready to raise capital and grow. Then you go get your lead investor, and then and then you put pressure on. You have to put pressure on.
Yeah.
So totally.
So we're going to jump to some of the comments. I've seen a few come up. So let's do this on the fly. So Claire Hallam.
Yeah.
Actually, there's more comments coming through. Okay.
Claire's part of Pollenizer, and she knows we've had some amazing investors and some shitty investors. So you definitely got to do your DD.
Yeah. And then Andrew Pitt says, thoughts on strategic investors versus VC?
Yeah. So I think
what's a strategic investor?
Normally you're talking about a corporate.
Yeah.
A corporate. Okay. A view again through Pollenizer. Tony 4 has a nice comment that a strategic investor massively increases your chance of getting an exit, but normally reduces your exit size because you've got one main buyer. The other thing to think about with a strategic investor is what are your other customers going to think about with that strategic investor? If it's sort of diagonal, like if you get investment from a customer or from a supplier, there could be a dynamic in your industry which means that no one else wants to work with you. It could be great. There could be a strategic investor which everyone respects, and that elevates you to a much higher proposition. So you've really got to think about what happens down the track. One thing I've seen some companies do is actually go and get at least 2 strategic investors at the same level. So I don't like strategic investors to be a lead or to dominate the round or take a board seat. Yeah. Because what if the strategy of that company is no longer changes? What if it changes? So what if Oracle invests in you for strategic reasons, and then next year they're like, actually, we're not interested in AI anymore. Yeah. Like, oh, hang on, our major investor no longer cares about us. Yeah. So that might be, maybe it's a good thing in terms of them not caring, but you just be aware. The other thing I'll say is take what they're offering you and tell them the value is going to be for you, and dilute it down to 10%. So if they say, oh, Matt, we're going to invest in your business, we're going to give you access to our sales channels, we're going to give you all this IP and all this support, we'll give you all this promotion and management, most likely it's going to be a little bit, because the people who are selling you the investment are not the middle managers who are required to do all that other value. Like it's just much harder.
So the next comments from Ryan Cross: urgency, scarcity, etc. work for pricing products and your company equity. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Totally. There's got to be a demand, right? It's got to be. Are you solving a big problem? So this is what we say when we're talking about a startup, right? Yeah. Are you solving a big problem for an investor? Like they can keep the money in their pocket and go on a holiday, and they're definitely going to go on the holiday, right? Or they can put it into your business and possibly in the future get some value out of it. But solving a big problem, like, wow, I'd really love to be in that. So and think about that. Are they actually angel investors who do this for a living? Are they serious about it? Or are they random? So. Okay,
before we take a break from the comments, there's a few more coming through.
Yeah.
We're at our peak. There was 29 people live.
Woohoo! Man.
So actually, I might take a break right now. Like, do you want to give a shout out to like any companies you're working with or who you're working for at the moment?
So I'm still helping Pollenizer on their portfolio. So just for clarity for everyone, Pollenizer's not doing any of the corporate consulting anymore, but we've still got a portfolio of companies, so working on that. I'm an investor in StartMate, so trying to support some of the Melbourne companies, but it's there's a lot of them this year, so that's hard work. And my main gig is helping the Muridi alumni companies. So Holly Cardew from Pixies, just in San Francisco. I met with her yesterday. She's doing great, got some really big enterprise opportunities. Gary from Disrupt Sports is doing great. He's in San Francisco on Monday. Got some amazing big brand deals. He's gone B2B as well. One really interesting thing is how many companies go from consumer to B2B and from SME to enterprise in terms of the amount of money available. And also had a good chat to the Safe Site guys yesterday.
It's Peter, right? And Dave
and Lee.
Yeah.
Lee's still in Gold Coast doing the dev. Really interesting analogy for them was that they had a good product and a good team focused on Australia, and they had about 5 clients about 2 years ago. 2 years in the US with the same team working their butts off, they have 3,000 clients here in the US. So,
they closed a round, or maybe multiple rounds, right?
They did 2 seed rounds and working on some more growth. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, we're going to jump back into the questions. So,
by the way, it's nearly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which is why I'm drinking a beer. Okay,
so it's 9 a.m. on Saturday.
Exactly. If anyone's drinking a beer, I'll throw a photo in the. Please don't do that.
So the next question I had was, so actually, how this AMA came about was because I think you did post in our group saying, "Hey, happy to review any term sheets," and that was awesome. And there was 50 comments. People wanted to help out and review term sheets.
Yeah.
And so at a high level, what are some of the important things you should look out for in a term sheet?
My motivation to do that was that the Australian tech industry is not strong enough to repel arseholes and parasites. So, and there's a lot of young entrepreneurs who come in and they're like, wow, I don't know, I need to raise money, and someone offers me $100,000 for 80% of my business and no control of the board and all these things. But that sounds really good, right? And the issue is that if they want to come to Muridi or StartMate or for me Invest, they are broken at foundation. And one of the beautiful things about City Startups is you're now in a community of other entrepreneurs, of which out of the 9,800 of them, at least 500 of them have raised money before. At least 100 of them have raised money multiple times and seen multiple term sheets.
Yeah.
We've got to support each other. We've got to band together and say, no more shitty term sheets from investors, because we've got what they want, which is really good tech companies, and we're going to give them 100x by being good. So just don't ever sign a term sheet with at least showing 3. Post it on you're better off just posting it, because even if the investor backs away because of that, that was a good thing. That's absolutely a good thing. We've got to support each other. And I know it's a bit mixed and that sometimes it's hard to do, but there's definitely enough now that we should be able to support that. So that's what drove it. And I wasn't born with knowledge of term sheets.
Yeah.
I raised $35,000 for a startup in 1997.
Yeah. Which
was an online business database. And I thought that was the most amount of money you could possibly ever raise, right? I thought, oh my God, why are these crazy people giving me this money? I raised it at a $100,000 valuation to build a product, but I had the money in the bank, and Claire Hallam will laugh and be scared about this, but she'll know it's true. I took all the money, put it in my bank, no documents, no shareholders agreement, no share subscription agreement, nothing. I didn't even know there was a board. I never had a board meeting for my company.
Yeah.
And we actually got to some pretty good revenues, and then we got slammed by this government legislation, actually. So
yeah.
But I did that, and then I went to Kazar, and then we did Pollinizer, and then we did term sheet after term sheet after term sheet. And once you see 10, you pattern recognize. I can see a term sheet now and go bad. But it's not because I'm again gifted. It's because I've just done it multiple times.
Yeah. I feel like you've got the scars in your back.
I've got some scars. I've got the scars on my knees. That's from knee surgery. But so the things to think about is the terms can be significantly more important than money. Someone could say, I'll give you $1 million at $100 million valuation, and still you shouldn't do it if the terms are shitty. And you see this a lot in Australia as well, because there's all these companies and this tiny amount of risk capital. So the ball's in their court. They're like, well, I want a board seat and I want control. I don't want you to make any major changes without my consent. All these restrictions. I've seen like 7 tranches of capital, which is basically means they're not actually investing now. They're only investing 20 grand. So you see a lot of things, and everyone is different. We're doing the session tomorrow, but you should the key thing is you definitely show someone and imagine like you've got to do the scenarios. It might seem like it's just a document. It's not going to matter, and if everything's going great, it probably won't matter. But if things get shitty, or actually if things go really, really, really well, and you don't know that your agreement's got an option clause for them to buy out half the company if they so choose for the same valuation, and you didn't, I thought, it's not a big deal later. Like, you've got to go through all of it in detail. You've got to get good at it. There's term sheets available online. Again, go and speak to some people and understand how it works, and understand those implications, and imagine what might happen. What if it goes well and we grow here? What if we move countries? What if we have to raise more money? What if we run out of money? So I believe actually that the investors it shouldn't be completely and utterly like every time being an uncapped safe note, and it's all about that. Like it's all the entrepreneur side. Not the investors are parting with money. They are taking a risk. They do want to work with you. They should get a fair return. Like we should be trying to create that for them. But we've got to balance the books a little bit. It's not completely and utterly. It's not fair at the moment because we've spent the last 30 years with scarcity on the capital side. But we've got to realise that actually, and this is hard, right? Not all businesses are going to succeed. We're going to say the good entrepreneurs and good businesses are a scarcity too.
So we almost cracked 40 viewers. It was 39 at one stage.
Close. We're getting bored now.
The same way outrageous stuff. No, so actually it's a good point to get to my next question is like, how do you raise money from overseas? Like, what's the difference to Australia? Are the amounts different? Are like the terms different? The legals different?
So I want to talk about a couple of areas around this. So I think I think it's just as hard to raise each round in Australia as it is in Silicon Valley. And the reason is that there's definitely, I'd say, 40 to 50 times the amount of money in Silicon Valley, but there is 100 times the amount of companies. Like Silicon Valley is not a secret that only Sydney startups people know, right? It's the whole world knows about it, and everyone comes here. It's already strong enough. Like I was at the Y Combinator demo day on Monday and Tuesday this week. I'd say 80% of the teams had someone who was a previous entrepreneur or from a big company. Like, this guy was doing this autonomous vehicle, and he's like, yes, I ran the autonomous vehicles division for Ford. It's like, holy shit. Like the caliber is very, very high. So, but the difference is that the amounts are much bigger. So an angel round in Australia can be sort of 250 to 800. An angel round here can be, $1 million to $5 million for an angel round.
Yeah, I heard that recently.
Angel or seed round. Yeah. A Series A here is preferably $5 million to $15 million. Series B, this goes astronomical from there. So,
I heard like some people said 60, some said 30. So maybe it's in that range.
Yeah, it is really hard and very competitive. Nick Holmes, the court who's over here, was like, man, I just, thought the grounds, it's gonna be the land of milk and honey, but it's damn hard to get that. It's
just found a cupcake.
Cupcake, exactly. It's a toy cupcake. Matt gets to eat it if he pays himself.
Sorry, go.
The key thing is that you have 0.001% chance of raising money from the US with an Australian business because unless that business is absolutely focused on the US market. Australia is considered an emerging market, basically a developing nation in terms of technology. It's small, it's far away, like it's a tiny, tiny, tiny market.
Yeah.
If you're in Australia and you've got lots and lots of customers in the US, like Fat Secret does, and Tamando and a bunch of others, no problems. Wow, that's great. You've got, the attitude of the US and China is you go out of those markets once you've saturated them. In Australia, you saturated very early. So we have a real pressure point in Australia where if you actually have got international success, why would you raise money from an Australian investor? Unless you're really, really early in. If you don't have international success, you definitely can't raise overseas. And what's an Australian investor going to do? Like, do they actually have experience and skill in taking you overseas? Taking overseas, have they done that multiple times before?
Yeah.
So they may be looking for arbitrage, which is fine, right? They're like, hey, I found this great technology company in Australia. It's doing $1 million in revenue in Australia. I think it could work in the US. I'll invest $1 million at $3 million valuation if I'm tough, and I'll take it to the US and I'll help grow the sales. I think that can be fine, because if you don't know how to do it, that's actually, again, in terms of 10x the money, that's actually a pretty good deal. So, but the key thing again is any US investor is going to say, I want you here. Mike and Scott, they had an office in New York. They set up the office in San Francisco. They had a US president really early. It's like they had an engineering in Australia, but they were really aggressively targeting the US. When at Pollenizer, Mike was on our advisory board. When we used Confluence and Jira, we had to pay in US dollars. Not because it's because they wanted to focus on the US market. Like the Australian market was a backup. So, and that's why it's much easier for those companies to raise it in the US. If you've got to be a US story to raise in overseas.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And the next question I have is you've been around for a while. You've raised money from various people. You've probably invested with other people as well. Who are the best VCs and angels you've worked with?
Yeah, I think it's a subjective question, and it's definitely
depends. Totally subjective. Yeah. That's why we're here.
It depends on the on your company, right? There are companies, there are investors who are great at industry verticals. There are investors that are great at particular types of companies. There are, and I think that's really critical. Investors should reject 99% of the deals they get, because they should be finding the ones that they really like, that really add value to them. And maybe you need to go and speak to 100 investors to find the one that really matches you. And that's key. Are they at the right stage? Are they the right people? Are they the right personality fit? Do they have the right experience? It should be a really aggressive conversation. In terms of the people, Matt McFarlane from Ewa, I don't know if hope he does some angel investing still in WA. He's one of the most highest integrity, highest supportive guys. He was an early investor in Pollenizer and just always prepared to get in there and get work done, which is fantastic.
He was an investor in Discover as well.
Yeah. So Matt's a really good guy. I'm really interested in what Rampersan is doing with marketplaces. I was chatting to Paul Natali last week. What they're doing with marketplace businesses like Expert 360 and others is fantastic. It's great to see Blackbird that has such a background in successful entrepreneurs as LPs and taking a bit more risk. I think Nikki and Rick both have a view to what is which high risks are worth taking, and that's added significantly, I think, to the ecosystem. SquarePeg, the fact that massive successes like Seek are reinvesting in the ecosystem, they could go sit on the beach forever, right? And they're sure they'd get bored, but they're bored with a bunch of money in their back pocket. The fact that they're reinvesting is excellent, and again, each investor has their own particular value add. It's your job to work that out.
What I found interesting was that they just don't invest in Australian businesses. They also invest in overseas businesses. So I think they've got people in like Germany or Israel or something.
Israel, yeah.
And so I saw that they invested in Uber. I was looking at their portfolio. Uber's one of them, and Fiverr.
Right.
I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. A really good thing to do as an entrepreneur is to go on to read about the tips for angel investors. Read Paul Singh's SlideShare about Moneyball for angel investing. Think about it from their perspective if you're going for angels. Put yourself in their shoes and understand how they manage that process.
Yeah,
it can be really valuable.
So the other next two questions, even more subjective. So it was for you? What was the hardest thing about raising money?
Hardest thing about raising money by far was when I emailed investors and said, hey, it hasn't worked, we're closing the company down. That is really painful to do. Like, I get we're taking risks, but I take it really personally when I look someone in the eyes and tell them I'm going to work my ass off and try my very best. And it's hard. I'm definitely a more well-known person than I am a successful tech entrepreneur. But maybe that's because I just try lots and lots of stuff. So,
but I assume like they would have some idea it's closing down, as in like you'd probably give them updates and say, things aren't looking good, we're struggling with this, or was it just out of the blue?
No, I think it's letting people know. I think my first one when I was 23 I was 25 when we closed it down. I think the legislation change came out of the blue, which ended our lives pretty quickly. But the businesses again, the model we had at Pollinizer was to test quickly and close it down quickly. So I don't think anyone was particularly attached to those things. But other businesses are harder. I think the hardest thing about capital raising is to build a business that's worth investing in. You get what you like. This is what my kindergarten teacher said to my son, and we use it all the time. You get what you get, and you don't get upset. So
I love that.
If you're bitching and complaining that no one's investing in your business, maybe it's not good enough. Maybe you're not building relationships. Like, it's not investors' fault. Like, and people whinge about the Australian investor scene. Investment is a 10-year lagging indicator to successful industry. So if you're sitting there going, oh, hang on, someone in the US just raised $20 million for the same idea, and I've got 3 customers. Well, move to the US, go get some customers, go find someone else who's like, maybe it was luck, maybe it's timing. Those things do matter, but you got to go and create the circumstances by which you can go and get investment. And by far that is build a product that customers really, really want and use all the time and pay you for and makes a profit. Like, that's I can't handle any more whinging of like, I just can't get anyone to invest. Like, that's unfair. Like, you know what? It's not meant to be fair. Like, you're supposed to do the work. So that's, if you create a product that's if you're a good team that has a good product that's going for a big market, maybe you don't even need the money. Like, and I actually, one test is, and we did this with Spreets when we were being acquired. And nearly every time I've raised money, we've thought at some stage, at that stage we almost don't need it. And that's how good it was to actually even raise money. That we may not even need the money.
So the last question I had planned was, what is the worst thing that happened to you when raising money? Was it the previous thing, or?
The worst thing that happened to me when raising money.
We just want to hear some war stories.
Yeah.
Well, what's the worst thing about raising money?
I went down to Melbourne and did 18 pitches in 2 days, and I got to the airport and someone said, "Yep, I'm in." And then when I landed back in Sydney, they said, "Actually, no, I've changed my mind."
That's only a 1 hour flight.
Yeah, I know. I had someone who said they were in, and then they said, "Actually, my wife just bought a house, so sorry, I'm out." So the heartbreaking of being like almost having it done and then taken away from you is really, really hard. War stories. We had one investor where we said we didn't think we were getting an investment, so we're like, we'll put money into the business. Yeah. And then someone said, if you're putting money in, we'll put in like a lot more. Well, I said, okay. Well, you don't need our money now. And they said, if you don't believe in it, we're out. Yeah. And we're like, no, we're only putting it in to keep it going. And they're like, no, and the whole thing fell apart. So a stupid signal, like I just didn't read that to be like, oh shit, they needed us to put the money in for the confidence, not because they wanted to take it all around. Okay. So doing dumb things like that. War stories of capital raising. Man, just far too many. There could be a whole section. Let me think of some more. Look, the worst thing at the moment for capital raising is really, really bad term sheets, like 7 tranches or complete and utter board control, limiting your salaries and just. And I know where these investors are coming from is downside protection, but they just make life so hard for entrepreneurs that they're probably not going to achieve their full potential. But that's a constant struggle. So
cool. I think that's pretty much it. Let's see if there's any questions. So Dean Collins says flying in for investments doesn't work. So I assume it means like flying into the US or to China or something to just raise money.
But even from in Australia, like you need to be doing 10 million in revenue if you want to get a US investor to invest in you and you stay in Australia, at least 10 million in revenue, the 25 to $50 million level. So otherwise, you've got to move to that big market because you just need too much help. So look at Atlassian Campaign Monitor, BigCommerce again. Their first investments were 60 million, 150 and 250 million each. So you've got to be pretty significant. Ryan's crosses question about definitions of success. I think that's really important. I see this a lot with capital raising. I say to a lot of companies, I don't tell them what to do, but I say you should consider not capital raising, staying in Australia, building a good business, getting to a couple $1 million in revenue, and this is your first company, sell it for 25 million, put it in the bank, and then go make your next one much, much bigger. If you don't have the stomach for going to the big market, if you don't want to move, if you don't want to spend the next 10 years doing it, Terry Hillsberg makes the comment that sometimes people just want 2 Mercs in the garage and the kids in private school.
That sounds like Terry.
He says Teslas now, I think, but because I won't name names. But from that base, you've built one successful business, you can go build another one. Mm-hmm. Freelancer is Matt Barry's second business. Atlassian is Mike Cannon-Brooks' second business. I think the BigCommerce and Campaign Monitor guys are the same. Mm-hmm. Spreets was Dean McAvoy's second business. So if you build a small business first and you do it quicker and you get a return out of it, what you take into that next business is maybe a bit of money, the knowledge and experience to multiply it out. So not everyone can be a Zuckerberg and a Jobs to make their first business the $1 billion one. There's a really good infographic online. I'll share it out, which talks about the paths of billionaires. It's quite good.
Yeah. I'll jump to the last question from Vincent Wade.
Sorry, Bruce asked about Aussie space industry.
Yeah.
Really briefly, Bruce, I think we've got a big potential there. There's great companies like CubeRider and things that Tim Parsons and others are doing. Mm-hmm. There's some things that we've got an opportunity there. The market is, again, it's not about the consumer market, but it's can we build it here and sell internationally? And there's a lot of pressure, obviously, in a lot of markets like China, USA, France, Germany, everywhere. So one thing for us to think about is geographic density, and hopefully the Sydney startup space can do that. And the other one is what 3 things are we known at being best at in the world? Mm-hmm. We can't be best at everything. Israel has its strengths. Austin has its strengths. London has its strengths. What 3 ones can it be? And I don't know if space can be that, possibly, but there we go.
So the question from Vincent Way says, "Hi Mick, I'm from an early stage edutech company. We currently run a lot of in-person classes to validate our model revenue. What are your thoughts about thinking about being global and being scalable on day one versus focus on creating a very successful model in the Australian market before thinking about targeting overseas markets?"
It's a really, really tough question. We see this all the time. So the tough part is if you validate in Australia in that school and then go, it works. My rough rule of thumb is that proof in Australia for consumer product is about halfway there of proof in the US. Like that's how different they are. Mm-hmm. I know we sort of kind of speak the same language, water instead of water, but sort of. But the reality is they are different in 100 little ways, and those ways really matter in consumer. Sorry, consumer's probably 50 to 80% the same. Enterprise or B2B, I think is sort of anywhere as low as 20, maximum of 60%. Like enterprise and edutech, the education system in the US is massively different. Mm-hmm. So even if you work your ass off for a year and nail it in Australia, you've got 2 problems. One is you haven't nailed it in the US, you've got no proof of that market. You can't raise any money on proof of the US. So you could take that and go to the US and then go prove it again, but you might have another year of work to do to prove it there. The second thing is that a lot of companies have trouble with B2B companies is they get 10 happy customers in Australia and all of a sudden they're running a small business in Australia. And then this is what SafeSite suffered. They had 6 customers in Australia and a US opportunity. And the thing that they struggled with and the thing that I worked through with them was, do you want to run a small business in Australia and a small business in the US and probably kill them both? Or do you want to actually do you want to close the Australian business and really focus on the big market? And they made the tough sacrifice to close the Australian business and focus on the US market, and now again 3,000 clients. So that's the hardest thing is, do you really actually want to, are you prepared to sacrifice it? And if there's a company in the US that's starting at the same point and you both work your ass off for 3 years and you've got 1 or 2 million in revenue, they're going to have 10 million in revenue and they're going to raise 150 million bucks and they might buy you. Yeah. Like in 3 years time, like the market's not going to be the same. So it's tough, and I'm happy to talk more about that.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. We've been live for an hour. We still have a peak of 27. We maintain that.
Okay.
Just before we finish up, just want to give you the opportunity. Do you want to give a shout out to any of the Meridian companies you're working with?
Oh, we did Pixie and SafeSide and Disrupt. Freight Exchange is doing great. Really proud of what they're doing.
Is that Kate?
Kate from Freight Exchange and Martin. Open Learning is smashing it in Southeast Asia, which is really
Adam Bremer.
And David. And the other thing about Open Learning is they are also massively leading the way in Australia in terms of great diversity in their company. They really push that aggressively. Really proud of what they're doing there. The Law Path company out of Pollinizer is doing fantastic. Flight Fox out of Startmate. So, I'm incestuous across all these things. So, and I'm just really excited about the growth that we have in the Australian market. If anyone wants to come to the US and do a scope around, I'll help you do your first 3 meetings as long as you do some work to be prepared. I think one other thing to point out is no one can afford people in the Silicon Valley like Matt, like engineers and great product people. So there's a big opportunity to build in Australia and use the R&D offset and sell into the US. We've got to get better export marketing. We've got to get on the plane. We've got to get on the plane and get to big markets. Otherwise, we'll keep building $20 million businesses, and we should be building $200 million businesses. So.
That's really great advice. So we'll probably end on that note. Thanks, everyone, and we'll catch you later.
Bye.